So the first item on the agenda is the approval of the warrant. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that's 500. Thank you. We have a number of meeting minutes, so for February 28th, 2023, do people feel ready to vote on those minutes tonight? Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain? And no, and the chair votes aye, and so that's 401. Okay, for the meeting minutes of March
There was one
21st,
abstention. One no.
didn't I say one?
She did.
Okay, I thought
Yeah.
I didn't miss that.
Okay.
Okay.
For the meeting minutes of March 21st, 2023, do people feel ready to vote on that one tonight?
So the corrections were made, so I'll
Yep.
second it. Yep.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain again.
Opposed? Abstain, 1, and the chair votes aye, so that's 401. The minutes of March 28th, do people feel ready to vote on that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain again.
Abstain, and the chair votes aye, 401. And the minutes of April 11th,
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair will abstain. I did not attend that meeting. So that's 401. Okay. So next we have public participation. And I wanted to mention that there are a couple of items on the agenda, like the BEAM update, that may have brought some of you out tonight. And I'd like to request that you save your comments until we get to that item on the agenda, which is not too far down. And I'd like to ask if anyone else wants to make a public comment at this point. I want to remind people that this is a business meeting of the school committee. We welcome input and comments from the public. Our public participation policy allows for 3 minutes speaking time so we can continue with our meeting. And if people want to give us written comments, we can have that as well. Public comments should be addressed to the chair. So is there anyone who's here tonight?
You're going to read the WebEx.
I'm sorry. Yes, I have another thing I have to read before we do public participation. Sorry. So the public can also access this meeting via WebEx technology. The Burlington School Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on BCAT, and video audio recordings are being made. This meeting of the Burlington School Committee is being held in person at the location provided on the notice, the school committee room at the high school. Members of the public are welcome to attend the meeting in person. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast. Unless otherwise required by law, members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. And also, I want to read our equity statement. Educational equity means that every child belongs and receives whatever support he, she, they need to develop his, her, their full academic, emotional, and social potential to learn and thrive every day. This begins with kindness and valuing the humanity of every child. So I think we're ready now for public participation. So is there anyone here in the audience who's here to comment on something that's not on the agenda? Okay. Is there anyone online who is interested in making a comment about anything before we start the next item? Okay, no hands. So now we have our information and reports. And I see Mr. Shannon wasn't able to make it. Dr. Conti, do you have a report from him for us?
I do not, and my belief is I just haven't been able to find it. So I'm sure Matt sent me something.
Okay.
He is always
He is.
ready with his plan. I may even get it during the meeting. So if I find it during
Okay.
the meeting, Madam Chair, I will read his report.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any subcommittee reports from anybody? Okay, I have a couple of a subcommittee report. The Burlington Youth Family Services, which I'm on the board of, did have a meeting, and a couple of things came up. I, first of all, wanted to thank Ms. Ciccolini, our special education director. She was able to help in a number of instances that help parents and students with different special needs to access the All-Town Chorus and some of the PTO events, so that was really appreciated. I also wanted to mention, some of you may know, the police department had a threat assessment training that the school sent a representative to, and that was described as being very helpful. So that's my report from the subcommittee. Mr. Brooks.
Through the chair, I had one alibi. The Recreation Committee voted in favor of the Francis Wyman School warrant that's going to be put in front of Town Hall tomorrow.
Okay. Any other subcommittee meetings? Okay. All right, and Ways and Means is not here tonight. I don't think they're online. Okay. And are there other announcements that people would like to make? Yes, Ms. Massardo? Oh,
I just wanted to say that it's Teacher Appreciation Week, so I wanted to say thank you to all of our teachers, and we really appreciate what you do, and I know all the students and parents and other teachers are all thankful for you, so thank you.
great. Yes, other announcements? Dr. Conti?
Just while we're on gratitude, want to thank town meeting for approving our operating budget and the accommodated account budget last night. We do have our warrant articles coming up on Wednesday, and a conversation about a high school feasibility study. So again, town meeting, we can't do this without town meeting support. And again, they have proven to be generous supporters of the public school. So I want to make sure I thank them. And so that's what I
All right.
wanted to say.
Well, that was my first announcement. I wanted to thank town meeting because they have been very generous, and I'm very pleased that they were able to pass the budget last night. I also wanted to quickly do I'm not up to date on all of the sports, but some of our sports teams have been having a fabulous spring, and in particular, one of our seniors, Olivia Pena, was named an all-scholastic honorable mention from the Boston Herald, and she also broke the school's record, I believe, and her own record with 1,000 points in the season. We also have Grace Hannafin, who I think has also broken a state record and her personal record in the long jump, I think it is. Our softball team, until this week, was undefeated, but they're having a fabulous season, and I was really fortunate I got to see them play yesterday. They are really amazing. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near where the ball is being thrown. I also got to attend a unified basketball team game last week, and it was really fun. The kids were having a blast, and I want to thank all the high school kids who participate in whatever way that they participate. And my last announcement is more of a request for the rest, to see if I can get a volunteer from the committee. There is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees has an annual award called the Outstanding School Partner Award that we can nominate, and I would really like to nominate the Burlington Chamber of Commerce, and I need someone to help me kind of give more of the examples. So is there someone on the committee who might know? Yeah, thank you. Okay. And, all right, thank you. And that's it for my announcements. All set? Okay. So, Dr. Conti, if we could move on to learning, equity, and thriving. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to invite up at this time Dr. Carrie Purchase, middle school principal. Dr. Purchase has some programs both teachers and students she wants to recognize. Again, some outstanding teachers here. I also see Dr. Athanalis, is that in the back row? So Penny Yoder, thank you for coming out tonight. And Carrie, without me going on and on, I will turn it over to you. But thank you for coming out, and I'm just, again, so impressed with these programs at the middle school, so thank you.
No, thank you for having us. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking now because I believe I have a presentation coming up that you'll get tired of hearing me talk. But it's my pleasure to invite 3 teachers up to our podium here, Mrs. Barbara Sturdivant, Mr. John Carroll, and Mr. John Walsh. They are our advisors to our National History Day, which is a program that with the support of the school committee we started in 2018 and 2019. And we've produced just amazing results and really engaged learners throughout. So I will let them speak to their accomplishments. In addition, Mr. Walsh is here kind of doing dual duty because he is our Latin teacher at the middle school, and he wants to talk a little bit about the National Latin Exam and the honors that our students have earned through that program. So without further ado, Mrs. Sturdivant, Mr. Walsh.
And I just want to
Mr.
comment
Carroll?
that it looks to me like we have 3 medal winners in the audience as well.
I believe
Oh,
there are
that's-
more than
Is that for the next time? Okay, I
Simon.
see 3 ribbons. Oh, I see
Oh,
there's more
there-
ribbons. So we have a number of, and you'll introduce them for us, yes? Okay.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
they'll introduce, and I was going to do this after, but seeing that it's Teacher Appreciation Week and seeing that one of my favorite things to do is to embarrass Mrs. Sturdivant. We are also, I want to recognize Mrs. Sturdivant for being nominated to the Patricia Bering Teacher of the Year Award. This is an award sponsored by Patricia Bering in recognition of the pivotal role teachers play in the lives of students. She is representing middle schools across Massachusetts as the National History Day representative, and June 15th she'll find out if she wins. So it really is a testament to all of her hard work.
Will you make sure that the mics are on, both of them? Yeah, thank you.
I'm,
Check 1, 2.
my name's Barbara Sturdivant,
My name is John Walsh.
And I'm John Carroll.
and as Dr. Purchase said, in 2018, 2019, we were given the go-ahead to begin the National History Day program at Marshall Simons Middle School. And since then, I am going to conservatively say we have had well over 100 students all those years added up. And the way the competition works, it's called National History Day, but they do send representatives from Japan, South Korea, Germany, so it's really international. Every year, students are given a theme, and students in grades 6 through 12 are permitted to compete, and we represent the junior division, which is grades 6 through 8, and we had, I would say, 50. Many more started, but over 50 students competed at our first round, which we call districts or regionals. From there, we sent on 21 students to the state competition. Those students placed in the top 6 for the Northern Division, or the Northern Region. If they placed in the top 2 of their category, and I will let, someone want to say the categories, or do you want me to do it?
Oh, you might as well.
Okay, so the category, they can work either individually or in groups, and they can write an essay or a paper. They can do an exhibit. They can create a documentary, a website, or write and perform a performance. And again, they can do this in groups or individually. And if they placed in the top 2 in the state, they advanced to the national competition, which is held at the University of Maryland from June 11th to June 15th. And we are so incredibly excited to say that we had 2 students from Burlington High School who compete all like on their own. They do this whole thing, who are moving to nationals. But here with us today, we have 9 Marshall Simons Middle School members who have all qualified. They are the best of the best in the state of Massachusetts, and we're going to embarrass them and make them all come up. Come on, guys. So with the permission, we would like them to introduce themselves and just say what their topic and what their category was. Okay? And what grade you're in.
Yeah, what grade you're in.
So name, project style, and grade, and let's start. Since with some of this one gentleman here might look familiar, so we're going to make him go first. We got to go up to the mic.
Hello, my name is Zachary Titus, and I'm in 8th grade. I created a documentary called I Want My MTV, New Frontiers in Music, which is about 80s music and the influence that MTV had on entertainment as a whole, really. I really enjoyed working this year on it because I really got to learn about more music that I listen to a lot of 80s music, so it was interesting to me, and yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
You too.
The oldies.
Hello, my name is Hannah Titus. And I'm Rick Turnquist. We created a performance on Dorothea Dix. Dorothea Dix was a mental health advocate in the early 19th century, and we performed a performance about her and her life.
Thank you. What grade are you in?
Oh, we're in 8th grade.
8th grade.
My name is Therese Kaczynski.
My name is Rena Arcipethy.
And we created our project on the Montreal Protocol. It was an exhibit, and it was about how it was a frontier in history and changed environmental treaties, really, for the world.
What grade are you in?
We're in 8th grade.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Alexander. Okay. My name is Alexander Manka, and I created my project on high-speed rail and how it affected transportation as a whole. I'm in 7th grade, and I wrote a paper.
Thank you.
My name is Abhay Sharma. I'm Christian Jordan DeLeon. I'm Marav Menon. So we did a project on Mary Curie. It was Mary Curie glowing discoveries in her radiant life, and we did an exhibit, and we're in grade 6.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Now, before you go sit down, would you like to get your picture taken with the school committee?
Yes.
So why don't you just stand behind? We often get in front, but I think with all of you, it might fit better if you just come stand behind us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Be careful, watch the TV.
Yeah, there's actually. Great. Congratulations. 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 Congratulations.
Guys, maybe do
Yeah, see if we can get the teachers in too. Can we get the teachers in?
Any parent, come on up, please, don't sit back.
Yeah. Okay, don't pull over. Come stand up close so we can get everybody in the picture. Come, can you move over just a little so everybody gets in? Good. Can you get everyone in, Mr. Cuna? All right. All right. In a minute, Mr. Cuna will get out of your way and the parents can get the pictures. I know, he doesn't like to get in the pictures. Yeah, come on up now. Go ahead. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Okay. That's interesting. Thank you. Great.
You guys can sit. One more?
Yes, of course.
Two more.
And,
Oh, take two.
yeah. Oh, no, we have two more. All right, here's another one, too. Okay. Good, good, good.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I want to see yours.
Congratulations to all the
We realized
students.
we forgot to mention.
And also congratulations to the teachers, and thank you, because we know how much work goes into this for the students, but also for the teachers. And I know you want to say something else, so go ahead.
Someone had asked, why do they have 2 medals? And they have 2 medals because their first medal is for their regional or districts placement, and their second medal is their state.
Ah.
And we just also wanted to send a special congratulations to Chloe Kuvumbi and Sonia Sarolikar, who worked together on a group exhibit about DNA. I don't remember the exact title, but they placed first in the state for their exhibit at the senior level. They were not able to be with us, but they will be joining us at the University of Maryland. And we couldn't do it without the support of their families, who have been nothing short of amazing, people who granted them interviews, people we've been throwing their projects at them saying, look at this, Dr. Purchase, Dr. A, Miss Mantia, and the whole staff at MSMS. They really, they let us use their rooms, they let us pick their brains.
Yeah.
Everything else?
Well,
Thank you.
thank you, and congratulations to the families, to the students, and the teachers, and Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Barbara, again, a question the school committee always asks is, what do you need and how can they help? So I just think...
You may not want to ask that, no. We'll be in touch because we actually have talked, and there's a couple things that we really would love. And if you want us to say it now, we can, or we can table that conversation.
Again, just please, I know the school committee's
We'll
interested.
say one quick one, and I
they want to
think
support the program.
Zach will back us up on this. We would love an awesome computer or two for editing, because they do amazing documentaries. And if Zach looked familiar, it's because you saw him last year. He was also a nationals winner as a nationals contender as a 7th grader. So we would love, because they work so incredibly hard. And they do great work with what they have, but...
We're juggling MacBooks right now, so it's...
Thank you.
All right, we can certainly follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, are we going to have one of these people stay? Yes.
I'm still here. So as was said before, my name is John Walsh. I'm the Latin teacher at Marshall Simons. And every year, one of the things, it's kind of a rite of passage in a Latin class, is they take what's called the National Latin Exam, which kind of treads, you hear exam, you think of a scary test. It kind of treads that line between that and a contest, an ability for kids to show off what they've learned. It tests the kids. It's a 40-question test. You get a score out of 40, very easy to figure out. They test them on, obviously, language, grammar, but also Roman history, culture, and mythology. It's kind of a grab bag on what they could do, and I'm very pleased to announce of the 51 kids at Marshall Simons who took it, 26 of them qualified for awards. I'd like to just very briefly run through them so they could get some recognition. So I think it's worth noting, this particular group of 8th graders, due to all of the circumstances surrounding COVID, they were not able to have a 6th grade world language experience. But, despite that, they still are achieving where everyone would like to see them. So the first level of award is called cum laude, like with a diploma means with praise. So with that, I'd like to recognize Tommy Cullen, Daniel Hannafin, Emerson Matta, Cole O'Regan, AJ Pedruzzi, and Connor Milne, all of whom fell into that. Above that, we have the magna cum laude category with great praise. Awarded there, we have James Kenda, Christian Im, Akshara Agrawal, Therese Kaczynski, who is behind us, Avishai Nagy, Benjamin Locke, Dio Benston, Henry Stefanowitz, and Giacomo Gibney. Above that, we have the maxima cum laude with the higher or greatest praise. That also comes with a silver medal, so everyone likes hardware. With that, we have Bella Bonacera, Eden Snyder, Ben Peters, Zach Titus, also behind us, Ronit Arisapathy, Asa Gans, Sachet Kadakari, and Rahul Patel. And at the top, we have the Summa Cum Laude Awards with the highest praise, which comes with a gold medal. We had 3 award winners here, Claire Duty, Reena Arisapathy, also behind us, and Lena Harsani. So I think they wanted to give an opportunity to have their names read and let them be recognized, because they did, it's a high achievement to do that, and I'm very proud of them.
I want to congratulate all the students and thank the teachers and the families who support their students, and congratulations to those of you in the audience who are here on 2 accounts tonight. So thank you. Does anyone else want to have a comment?
Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Dr. Conti?
Again, I think, John, not every school offers Latin, and not every school can sustain it. So I think obviously what the kids are doing is amazing, but we understand that there's a teacher behind that, and I know you work really closely with Mr. Stringer, Greg Stringer, here at the high school, and so our kids really have, I think, a top-notch 6 to 12 Latin experience, and so any of your Latin Award winners who want to continue their Latin journey at the high school have that opportunity. So again, it's because of your efforts that the program is thriving. So thank you.
Thank you.
How appropriate for Teacher Appreciation Week, but thank you all. Appreciate it. All right, Dr. Conti, our next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We started this conversation actually during the summertime, and so we want to continue that. Again, Dr. Purchase has a presentation that I think will be very informative, and really wanted to explore some of the history and details of the current BEAM program. I think identify some of the challenges that we see, and just talk about those challenges with the committee. And I think Dr. Purchase, again, I sort of, we've spoken, I agree with her findings, and sort of our recommendations for where we go from here. So I think that's the follow-through that we promised the committee back in the summer. So that's where we're here. Obviously, Dr. Purchase is joined by her assistant principal, Dr. Peniota Athanalis. Did I pronounce that? Okay. So Dr. Athanalis, thank you for coming tonight as well.
Thank you. So Mr. Kuhn is going to pull up the presentation, and honestly, the presentation was just a way for me to organize my thoughts as we went through this conversation. A few meetings back, there was a preliminary conversation that started around the program review that had been shared, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight with Dr. Athanalis to review the program review briefly, but really talk about what this means and where we go from here. I want to recognize beforehand, before we enter into this conversation, that BEAM has been a long-standing tradition in the Burlington community, and having this conversation is going to be emotional for some. I think Mr. Foss, who was here when the conversation started, mentioned kind of noticing that there had been a pattern with the evolution of BEAM, and that it really started, kind of in the first 20 or so years as one program kind of shifted, kind of started more gifted and talented, shifted to more of an enrichment. And his comment stuck with me to really think about what's the next iteration, or what does this look like going forward. So really tonight, as we talk about this, I want to, one, recognize that the conversation is going to evoke emotions in some. I also want to recognize that anything that is talked about is not individually based. This is we're really looking at this from an objective perspective, and it's not judgmental or critical of any one individual, any teachers otherwise. Everyone's working incredibly hard to meet the diverse needs of students, and I think it's important that we also recognize that within those needs are needs of higher end learners, or students who learn at a faster pace, or I believe that the report called them outside of the box thinkers as well. So, excuse me. So, really, the purpose of this independent program review was to examine the BEAM program, and this is from the consultants, from a neutral perspective, felt that it was really important that there was an objective look. The consultants who did the program review had nothing, kind of involved, so they looked at the information, they looked at the data, and asked questions, gathered information, and then identified themes throughout. So I think that is really the intent and the purpose. Thank you, Dr. Conti. The program review, as it was mentioned when the committee started the conversation, was comprehensive. It looked at documents and data to understand BEAM students and schedules. It reviewed all of the written documentation associated with the program. It included site visits where the consultants visited the BEAM program classroom, but also our regular classrooms as well. And then focus groups with various stakeholders. We had current BEAM students had the opportunity opportunity to share their thoughts. Alum at Burlington High School had their opportunity to share their thoughts. Parents and families of current Beam students had the opportunity to share their thoughts. And parents, family members of students not in the Beam program had their opportunity. So overall, I think that it was a comprehensive review, and it was objective. And the following slide is essentially the executive summary of the report. I don't want to focus too much on the challenges, but I think it's important that we look at those because there are challenges that exist within the program. Fragmenting learning, not being aligned with frameworks, subjective selection of students. So there are some challenges that exist, and I don't think anyone thought that there weren't some challenges. When we shared this, and we did not share this whole presentation yet with the faculty, but up to this slide, I presented this slide to faculty, and I'm going to ask the same question of you tonight. Is there anything, moving away from the challenges, is there anything in the strengths column, student engagement, addressing alternative learning styles, inquiry encouraged, project-based learning, experiential learning, creativity, integration of arts into curriculum, develops executive functioning skills, foster independence and promotes maturation, and develops self-advocacy and self-confidence? Is there anything in that list that all students wouldn't benefit from? And that is really, I would say the focus in our conversation going forward is how do we continue to continually improve our curriculum for all students while addressing the individual needs of students that have different strengths. There was also a question asked of what's happening in other middle schools. So we sent out an email to 40 middle school principals that I have on a listserv that we kind of share information in all sorts of surveys. 9 principals responded. 8, they were asked, there were 2 different surveys. One was, do you have a gifted and talented program, yes or no? 8 people responded, no, they do not have a gifted and talented or enrichment program. What folks identified that they were doing was that they offered a differentiating program and instruction within a class. That there was, one person responded that there's an accelerated math in all 3 grade and then access to an earth science in 8th grade, so an accelerated science program. Otherwise, differentiating instruction and offering challenge assignments. Differentiated instruction in the classroom, choice extension activities, and that they're focusing on UDL, and that all new hires are required to take a differentiation course. So,
Just, Dr. Purchase, just UDL.
okay, UDL is Universal Design for Learning, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the MTSS piece. We had talked about that in the beginning. I'm sorry, we can.
I'm surprised that so few responded out of 40. I'm shocked.
I think it was a pretty good response. My sense is that people who either felt strongly about it responded, or that people saw it. And my guess is that, just based on my experience, that those folks probably didn't have a program, and so thought that it didn't apply. So clicking the button to say no wasn't. That, again, don't know that. We only know the 9 that responded. There was 1 yes, and that was local to us in Arlington, Addison Middle School, and they selected students entering into grade 7 that they really enjoy the class. It's an elective with no grades and no homework. So when I read that, and I take that it was instead of an allied arts or a special, so it wasn't in place of their core curriculum. It was kind of a special class that they were participating in. And then one of the difficulties is the recommendation process is based on teacher opinions and not selected by strict data. Again, one of the challenges that we've experienced. I have not yet connected with the principal there, but they're having some of the same conversations around opportunities, around access, and otherwise. So I think that of the 1 local school that's also looking at this, they're asking some of the same questions that we're asking and exploring. So what's next? So I think that it's really important, and when we think about education over the last 20 to 30 years, 30 years ago, we were not as inclusive as we are now. It was very typical that students with disabilities, special education happened in one place. Students who were identified as being gifted and talented or higher end learners were kind of educated in another place, and then you kind of had the middle of the road. Over time, education has become more inclusive. So instead of having these different silos, we have a foundational layer where all students need to have their needs met within the regular education setting. How is that done? That's done through really a well-articulated, rigorous curriculum for all students at that Tier 1 level, making sure that it's aligned with Massachusetts curriculum frameworks, making sure that we are interpreting the standards, not at the floor, not at the kind of the entry point of the standard, but really at the higher end of that, of the expectation, of the ceiling. Because any standard you look at, there's a range. So that's really important. And then I think this is where, when we start talking about students who are learning at a faster pace, are outside of the box thinkers, are gifted and talented, require academic enrichment, are there opportunities to break through the ceiling? Are there opportunities to reach beyond what that grade level expectation is and to really play into their strengths? And I think that while we're having this conversation, as I'm presenting as the middle school principal, I also think that we are part of a system, and I really think that we need to have a K-12 articulation and making sure that it's aligned. And so that's another important piece of what we're doing. We are hoping to move towards and planning to move towards universal design for learning, which is a model for planning and implementing instruction. The best illustration or analogy I can give for UDL is if you think back to, honestly, even this building, when we talk about ADA compliance, we're often adding on to the building. We might be adding a ramp to a staircase. We might be putting a lift on a stage so that it's accessible. Those are all afterthoughts. UDL is really meant to take into account the varying needs. So when we're talking about a building, it might be the varying physical needs of people. When we're talking about learning, we know that learners learn in very different ways and have different modes of learning, and the best way to show that. So if you look at newer architecture, you are looking at accessibility features embedded into the architecture. That is where I think with UDL and using that for teaching and learning, that's where we need to go to, is not thinking about the after piece or, okay, these students learn this already or demonstrating mastery. What do we do instead? We need to anticipate that and have that built in so that it's part of what we do. Like to, and we've talked about this through our Planning for Success document, is the instructional leadership team, really having our teachers work together with our administrators, with our instructional coach to set the stage, providing that time to continue to strengthen our Tier 1 and to make sure that they have the supports and the systems are in place necessary to support all learners. And then parallel to this conversation has been the ongoing schedule review process, which we are kind of coming to the end, and we'll have some recommendations for you soon. We have our last meeting next Monday, but we are looking at the implementation of an intervention and an extension block. And that's, again, through that process, but this is another avenue where we can start to individualize needs after they've been exposed to that consistent, rigorous Tier 1 instruction. So if you remember, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Athanellis, when we were here presenting our Planning for Success document, we talked about how MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, was really the framework that we were looking at the next 3 years with our planning. So I'm going to ask Dr. Athanellis to talk a little bit about MTSS.
Hi. So multi-tiered systems of support. This is a framework that's being used across the country. In Massachusetts, at the state level, there's a big focus on this. So RTI is something that you may or may not be familiar with, but basically, if you look inside this visual at the schoolhouse, you see those tiers there. So this is not getting rid of RTI, but we for a long time now, have been looking at things in this really focused way inside that schoolhouse. A lot is put on the people inside that schoolhouse. I'll say teachers especially. And we have certain structures in place where we go through this process and we try to give students the supports that they need and the extensions that they need. But a lot of times we don't look at all the systems around that. And so this is why you hear, like, for teachers, it's tiring. You feel like you're kind of spinning your wheels because you might not have all the tools that you need to be able to do what you need to do. And also, the structures that you're working within might not be the most conducive to really help push all learners forward. So that's what you see on the outside there, the different drivers: leadership, implementation, and competency drivers. So this is a process that districts go through. Sometimes it'll just be at the school level. We're embarking on this at the middle school because we feel like it's important. We're going to do an in-depth needs assessment to look at those outer pieces. So looking at the leadership drivers, looking at how are we allocating resources, to what extent are we working closely with our different, like, community members, looking at the competency drivers. So what are we doing in terms of recruitment and retention of teachers? What are we focusing on looking at there? And then implementation drivers, like, what is the curriculum we're using? How are we using it? What kind of data are we using to make our decisions? So, when you really think about the whole picture, there are all these things kind of working, these systems that have been in place for a long time that may or may not support student learning. So we're going to go through this process to really look at, like, what is in place, why is it in place, what's working, what's not, and getting input from all stakeholders. And I think you can go to the next slide. And then maybe, I think you want to just connect this part.
So I think that the next 3 slides is just a further kind of explanation of the different tiers. And I think that Tier 1, again, is around access and opportunity for all students to experience a rigorous, comprehensive, consistent curriculum. And I think that that's really important. And I think it's also incumbent upon us using the systems in place to make sure that we're meeting the individual needs of all learners, including students that are identified as being higher end, gifted, requiring the outside of the box thinkers. I'm having a hard time of kind of identifying and labeling. So it's that's why I'm stumbling over it. So Tier 1, all students. I think that when we talk about Tier 2 on the next slide, oftentimes Tier 2 is thought of someplace you go to and someone you go to. And that's not necessarily the case. And this is where those systems and those supports can help support educators. Because what we're talking about is not easy. I don't want to say, like, oh, this is great. We're talking about shifting and changing, and that's going to require a lot of support and a lot of work. So I want to identify that. But Tier 2 can happen in the inclusive settings. So it could be flexibly grouping students for instruction based on kind of where they're at with their learning. That can happen in the classroom. So that can happen when a student is struggling with learning, but it can also happen when students or one or a group of students have demonstrated mastery of a topic. They can be provided additional challenge going forward. It could be part of it, it could be having people push into the classroom to provide that support. So it doesn't need to be different than, but it's a way to support students both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And then finally, Tier 3 is kind of more of an individual, very small group, very targeted instruction. And this is where we're starting to really get into that specialized instruction through special education most times. Not all Tier 3 services are special education services, but oftentimes that's the closest connection. And it's not to say also that Tier 2 or Tier 3 happens and that you go there forever. It's really meant, and the initial thing is kids move in and out, and also kids have different strengths in different areas. Me personally, I can do 7th grade pre-algebra, a little bit of 8th grade algebra, pretty proficiently, but geometry and spatial, like I'm not there. So I think that's something that we need to think about too, is that students have different strengths in different areas, and we need to create programming and have a framework that supports students so that it's not, okay, this is a strong writer, therefore they're going to get this and not get the support they need in math. So really trying to break down some of those barriers and some of those silos that have been where we've gone to for different support. So my recommendations for next year is to continue the current BEAM model for students already in the program. So students going into 8th grade, like we did going into this year, that we would continue the 1 day a week pull-out model and go from there. I think that we're really continuing to focus on our Tier 1 curriculum and starting to, I won't even say starting, continuing to work with our educators on how to best incorporate the needs of all students into instruction in the classroom. And then I think we need to identify opportunities for additional challenges and enrichment within our Tier 1 curriculum. I've heard comments from the committee in the past that some students are bored in class, and these are and I believe, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, that those comments were kind of being offered from BEAM students, that the students that are participating in BEAM are bored in their regular classes. And what I would say is that my guess is, especially because of kind of the selection process, is that there are other children in class that are ready for challenge, that are also not as engaged as they could be. And it's not just a phenomenon of students that are in BEAM. So working with the instructional coach, the assistant principal for teaching and learning, BEAM teacher, teachers, program coordinators, identifying those opportunities to build challenge into our program, and challenge by choice, so that there's opportunity and access to that. Bringing students on field trips. This year, our 7th graders have gone to Peabody Essex Museum. On Friday, our 6th graders are going to see a play, The Lightning Thief, I believe, in Stoneham. So we've had that. We've had in-school experiences. I believe there are people here that have come and provided enrichment for our students and shared what it's like to be an elected official with our 8th graders for civic learning. Last week, we had a speaker who was a refugee from the Sudan, who shared their experiences with our 6th and 7th grade students who are reading books on refugee and, I forget the 6th grade book, I'm sorry, but Home of the Brave, so the experiences of refugees, and they had the opportunity to speak to a person who went through that experience. Oh, and we had the meteorologist in as well, Channel 4. So there's a lot of opportunities that we can bring that in. And also looking at project-based learning. Our 6th grade science teachers, I have to give them a shout out. They recently had students complete an authentic writing experience where they had to take their understanding of conducting heat, what keeps things cold, like think about your nice Yeti cup. So they've been learning all about that, and they had to take their understanding and design a new mug, and then they wrote to different companies, and it's been great to see the responses come in, and I just think there are a lot of opportunities that we can continue to build that in. Then I think we also need to find, oftentimes it's been described as a social emotional kind of program or that support, or the place where students felt a sense of belonging. So I think that we need to find other opportunities for that. So whether it's an extracurricular activity, whether it's, and whether it's a club, whether it's during the intervention and extension, whether it is a creative writing. I know that a lot of the BEAM curriculum has been logic, yes, and humanities-based, yes. So I think we have to find ways to integrate that, but then also to continue to support students who would have in the past maybe identified to participate. But I also think we need to recognize that there are a lot of students who might have not been selected, and that could have benefited from that. So by looking at this from a Tier 1 place and then making sure we're meeting the individual needs, I think is a really important next step. the intervention and extension program. Again, 25 minutes. We have our last schedule review committee meeting on Monday, this coming Monday, and then I'm sure I'll be back here again to go over that with you. It's something that's in the works. There are some structural things that would be very easy to fix, but some of the, we're likely going to need some time with really developing what does that intervention and extension block look like? How do we plan for it? So I don't want to say that any of this is quick or easy, but I think that this is where we need to move towards. Finally, connected but not, I wanted to take this opportunity just to share a couple of additional pieces of information. So not necessarily connected, but otherwise. This year, we currently have 2 levels of math in 7th and 8th grade and in 6th grade. So this year, when we placed students, we used what we thought was objective data, and I won't say we. It was primarily I who made the decision. Didn't necessarily ask for teacher recommendation because I didn't feel like we had clearly communicated the criteria. It hasn't been transparent, so we kind of used the data that was available to try to place students. And what I realized pretty early on was that students were not necessarily placed appropriately, and so we had students who were in the grade level, which is the lower level class, who really could have benefited from being in the advanced class, and vice versa. In having conversations and kind of went back, talked to my colleagues at the elementary schools, asked them what's the experience in 5th grade. Learned that there's an inconsistent experience, that some of the elementary schools are tiering for instruction, some are not tiering for instruction for math. Which becomes another kind of challenge to how do we, carefully, and identify students. So what we are, and what we've been talking about is eliminating the lower level of 6th grade math. Both are aligned with the state frameworks. It's really around pacing and around application of skills. So we're going to 1 level of math for the following year in 6th grade. There is not currently a plan in place to change that in 7th and 8th grade. It's really to provide that 1 consistent year, 3 math teachers as opposed to 12 math teachers, and then kind of move from there. Also want to recognize that we're having vertical conversations around math. So tomorrow morning, and Dr. Chen is joining us as well virtually, which I think is great, but we're talking with a high school, elementary school, and continuing this conversation around K-12 math, articulation and vertical alignment. There's a slight adjustment to the meeting patterns for allied arts next year. It's not a big change. And then, as Dr. Athanellis says, that we're going to be really working on that needs assessment for MTSS and identifying some smaller steps that we can start to actualize what we're speaking of. Okay.
Thank you both. And Dr. Athanellis, is this your first visit with the school committee? Second visit with the school committee. Okay, so you all have met Dr. Athanellis. So again, Carrie, I really appreciate all the work and time that you put in, the access that you provided to the outside folks. I like that you identified both the strengths and challenges and some solutions to those challenges. Again, I'll defer to the committee for some questions, and then I have sort of some questions or some points that I'd like to follow up with, Madam Chair, if that's okay.
Sure. So would people like to ask questions, have comments? No?
Just one, Madam Chair.
Mr. Brooks?
So how does the 1 level of math in 6th grade account for learners that are below grade level? So kids coming into the school with additional challenges, how does 1 level let them excel and do better if you're taking away a level of support from them?
You want to?
I'm just going to give a little piece. Yeah, so we've started, that's a really valid concern, valid question. And we've been meeting with the 6th grade math teachers. We happen to have some really, really skilled 6th grade math teachers, and we're starting with their input. What do you see as the benefits? What do you see as the challenges, and what supports do you need? I actually just met with them this morning, And I defer to them as the experts in math at that level. And they said that there are things that they love about it, things that they're like, okay, we're going to need some support. And so we're already starting to talk about what kinds of things we can put in place to really make sure that they truly are able to support all of the kids. So that's an ongoing process. So I just wanted to say that part.
And so what I would say is that we do have Tier 2 supports as well. So we do have math tutors that are available to students who are, when we use the data, we have a diagnostic screener, iReady, that helps us identify where students' current level of proficiency is at. We have a math specialist that will perform interventions and a tutor. So I think that there's that. We also have students with who require specialized instruction that will continue to get their service delivery based on their IEPs. So I think that there are the things that we're doing. I think that what we need to recognize is that when we have two levels and we group students in that way, that oftentimes we can perpetuate the gaps going forward as well. So if students aren't continually exposed to grade level content, even if they're not quite there yet, it needs to be a both and. They need to have that experience of being exposed to the grade level content while we're backfilling some of that. And so sometimes when we look at remediation, we go lower and slower, and then we just build the gaps. Whereas if we continue to have students experience high level, and again, there's not a huge difference between the two levels. They're off, from a scope and sequence standpoint, less than a week, and so it's around pacing, not necessarily around content. So I agree with Dr. Athanellis that our 6th grade math teachers are extremely talented, and will be able to support students. And I think that that's where those systems come into place, and that we need to look at how do we support those students. And so right now they go to a math tutor. Is there a model where the math tutor goes into the class on a regular basis, so that those are things that we're hoping to collaborate with the teachers on, so that we're able to move forward.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Mr. Brooks, there's been a lot of research on this recently because of COVID, and they're talking about learning loss and how you sort of catch students up and accelerate them. And it's not by slowing down the curriculum. It's just as Dr. Purchase was saying, kids need to be exposed to grade level curriculum. And then what schools are doing then is providing supplemental support, typically through tutors or interventionists to support that. So again, I think this is a well-researched way of trying to catch students up and not perpetuating, Dr. Purchase, as you said, some of the gaps that exist, because students who are behind, for lack of a better word, or have to learn new concepts, really have to learn at a faster rate if they're gonna catch up. So I think that's the challenge, or else the gap just kind of continues to move forward. So I would say that. But focusing back on BEAM, I like the phrase that you said in terms of breaking through the ceiling. And I felt like the presentation earlier today, the National History Day, was an example of students breaking through the ceiling and having the opportunity to excel. Are students selected for that program or singled out for that program?
They're self-selected, so it's done students in the beginning of the year. There's quite a bit of recruitment, and as Mrs. Sturdivant said, that they started with a few more students, but they at the end had 50 students participate in the competition. So
but no one is denied who wants to
participate? No one's denied, no.
So I mean, I think the important thing here for why we need to sort of rethink this program is not that it's not or hasn't been a positive experience for kids. I think it has been. I think we've heard from past graduates who said it was a really important part of their middle school experience. I think the thing for me is if it's that important of an experience, then all kids should have that opportunity. And so it's really an access question from my part. And if we can provide opportunities to break through the ceiling, like you kids came in and demonstrated today, like the National History Day, if there are opportunities like the National Latin Exam for students to really stretch themselves, and if our Tier 1 sort of core curriculum can be challenging. I think that's really where the work needs to happen. If there were an opportunity, I think we had talked about or mentioned potentially expanding after-school programming for students where all students could have access. And again, the issue with access to an after-school program might involve around having a bus available. So it may have nothing to do with the program itself.
And a nurse.
And a nurse, so it may have to do that. But again, Mrs. Monaco makes a good point, is that access is important in all of our programming and all of our activities. And providing a nurse so that all students can access a field trip is the same type of access that we need to be talking about when students are being selected for our programming. So I think we're honoring the 8th graders who are here. We do not have a incoming 6th grade group of students identified.
We don't, nor an incoming group of 7th grade, because we had put the incoming 6th graders on hold. So next year we would have one cohort of students, the incoming 8th grade, current 7th graders.
And I think that would really give us a year to work on that intervention extension block and then identify opportunities within the school day and after school to really stretch students moving forward, because I know that was a concern of the committee. So again, I think I'm very supportive of Dr. Purchase's recommendations. I think they're thoughtful, and I think they do address the access issues that BEAM has. And again, not questioning the intent 40 years ago. I think it served a wonderful purpose. And I just think our challenges are more inclusive now, and I do think we are looking to provide that opportunity to break the ceiling in other ways. And again, you saw that tonight.
So, Ms. Massardo, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I just had a comment, and Dr. Conti stole kind of part of it, but I appreciate all the work you put into this, because I know the report was lengthy, and I think you've crafted a well-done presentation. And I was also going to say it was a great example of the opportunities where he was here tonight, right? Like the great opportunity for a challenge to think outside the box, all of those things. So I love that program seems to be expanding, and I think we could use more things like that. But I appreciate the update very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Brooks?
So my second question is, from a resource allocation standpoint, does this changing of the program result in additional teacher requests? What staffing, what monies are going to be requested? How does this change this? And, what are the economic impacts to this change? And even a ballpark kind of dollar figure, would that be like, do you see 4 positions being needed to enact this, 1 position?
I see next year, again, we have collaboration time built in our schedule already. We have an instructional coach. We have an AP for teaching and learning. Our educators are going to be continuing the work that they do already, just with a slightly different bend. Do I think over time, in terms of a position, we currently have a full-time BEAM teacher. I see an opportunity for that teacher to potentially, as I talked about, a tutor pushing into a classroom where there are students that are identified or not, and then maybe supporting groups within that place, plus the caseload. So I don't see any implications for next year. I have requested prior to this a second instructional coach, so that would probably be a request that I would make again this coming year, so that we can continue to support our teachers with this work. So going back to that diagram, it's really those drivers around and the systems that support. Our teachers work incredibly hard, and we're asking them to do different. I'm not going to say more, I'm going to say different, that we need to support them with that. So that's where I see an ask coming, but it's been an ask that I've made before as well.
And again, through the chair, I'm sorry.
Yep. Mrs. Monaco?
Go first.
Okay.
No, again, through the chair, again, Mr. Brooks, if the program evolves as we're thinking, it may be potentially reallocation, because the BEAM teacher salary could be sort of reallocated into the coach position that Dr. Purchase is looking for as well. And again, serving all students, not just the students who've been
Nope, totally
selected in
understand.
the
I'm just
program.
trying to understand and start codifying some of those things early in the process, so we can better understand when it does come time for us to make a decision, what we're actually, kind of, enough, for lack of a better term, buying.
And I respect that, Mr. Brooks, and one of the reasons why with the schedule review process and why I'm not here saying like we want to do this for next year is because of that, because some of the changes that we're looking forward to in the following year, 24, 25, might have an implication with personnel. So I want to get that out early. So I appreciate that.
Mrs. Monaco?
I don't think this is any surprise. This is, where this has been headed. I will be very interested to see where it goes, what actually happens. I do think there's a category of students that do need additional outlets and learning, and be interesting to see what you happen to come up with and see how well it works. I know it's been a long process, and studying it, was thorough, and I understand the problems with the existing situation. I just hope you can come up with something that works well.
So I think, and I appreciate that, and trust me, I know I'm writing a big check here, and I think that the expectations are high. What I want to temper those expectations with there's not a switch we can flip. We're talking about changing practice, and we're talking about changing how we approach things. So it is going to be a more gradual piece. What I promise you is that we will continue to look at the needs of those students who need those additional supports, and find that sense of belonging, and think outside of the box for the outside of the box thinkers while we're playing it's a long-term game is what we're talking about when we're talking about UDL and MTSS and changing the framework. So there is going to be a period of time where it's kind of like, what are you doing? There will be a plan, because you're not necessarily going to see the outcomes right away. And I think that where we're going to be successful is if we can take gradual steps in the right direction that we'll continue to build on the success that we have.
Great. Mr. Bond? Yeah, I appreciate all the work that you put into this, and I agree it does need to change. But I did pull a statement from Sue Rogers from 2012, and basically said that she did not think BEAM should align with the current curricula. It should provide out-of-classroom experiences, which is kind of, I think, what the whole history thing represents. And I just want to make sure that we continue to do that. I do realize it has to align with mass curricula standards from reading that, but I do think that's kind of what the program is trying to do, is to push kids to think, like we were saying, the outside of the box thinkers and whatnot. I just want to make sure we don't lose that.
I agree with you. I think oftentimes in my 5 years here, in reflecting on the experiences that students in BEAM have had, I've often wondered, if going to the theater, if having those experiences are beneficial. We have a number of students who would benefit from that. So we have, unfortunately, there are some families that might not be able to go to a museum, might not be able to go to the theater, might not even go into Boston, even though it's 10 miles away. So I think that to Dr. Conti's point, this is around access for all. And so I think that there are cultural experiences and pieces that we want to embed, and we want to make sure that all students have opportunities to engage in that. And I think we need to recognize that there are students' needs, just like we recognize with students with disabilities or students who are not meeting grade level expectations in reading or in math yet. We need to meet their needs. Yes, we need to meet the needs on the other end. What I'm advocating for is that it's a collaborative process, and not you go here for that or you go here for that. I think that we need to look at it. I say it often, all kids are all of our responsibility. So that is something, whether we're talking about students with disabilities or students that are kind of outside of the box thinkers, we all need to take responsibility for their learning and making sure that we're meeting their individual needs. So thank you.
Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more comment then. So to that point, I think that would be a great opportunity in the Marshall-Simons Improvement Plan next year to start codifying some of those metrics you hope to gain over the 1, 2, and 3 years of your plan, to say, in year 1, we'd like to accomplish these 3 or 4 things, year 2, year 3, and we have a little bit more measurable metric than, say maybe observation or something. So if we could start putting those into the district and pushing the school improvement plans, I think that would help everyone's understanding, gives us kind of a benchmark for success to measure off of.
Okay.
And ensure we're capturing and keeping even the, above level learners through the full spectrum of people engaged.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, and I would just like to add that I do like the plan as you present it. I think it's the direction that I would love to see our schools going in. It's a huge shift. It's a huge shift for families, for teachers. I think that we have incredibly committed people to work with this process, but it's going to be hard. It might involve additional resources to make it, to have it work well. And the way you it's what you're describing is kind of what I've envisioned should be, and I actually realize that our equity statement says it too, which is that every child should receive whatever support he, she, or they need to develop his, her, or their full academic, emotional, and social potential to learn and thrive every day. So this kind of plan, to me, is striving and aspiring to that. And it may not happen next year, in 1 year, but it is where I'd like to see us going. And I also want to thank you for, all the time and work and thought you've put into it, and all the teachers that are helping to make this happen as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, if there's no other comments, we will thank you all. And is there any comment from the audience or from, yes, so Mr. Wadilla, would you like to make a comment?
Hi, Dave Wadilla. Parent of 4 kids that have gone through the school system. I actually had no intent of speaking on this today, but just listening to this, I wanted to make a point here. So I have kids that go across the entire spectrum. I have low-functioning kids, I have high-functioning kids. And the Burlington school system, as they went through it, has done a great job with all the kids. And if you think about it, the Burlington school system is kind of set up for the middle quartile of kids, right? That's the core of what you need to educate. Legally, you're responsible for making sure that the lower-end kids are educated. That leaves the top performers, and they can very easily slot down into the middle core, the middle quartile of kids. And it's really a moral obligation to make sure those kids are challenged. And I really thought the BEAM program did challenge my one high-performing kid very well, okay? And it was a program that was in place, and it was working. That's been taken down, and just from the conversation, it sounds like it will be years to bring up a comprehensive program that will challenge, albeit more kids, but it will challenge those high-end kids. I would ask you just to move with urgency here. If it's a year that you miss, if it's 2 years that you miss, you have missed educating kids that need to be high performers and educated towards high performance. So don't lose sight of that, okay? Move quickly on this. If you're going to take down the BEAM program, make sure that you're moving very quickly to put something in place. That is a moral obligation of the school system. That's all.
Thank you so much. Are there any comments online on this topic? Okay, thank you. Dr. Conti, shall we move on to the MASC policies?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now for the exciting part of the meeting.
Yeah.
Certainly would like to thank Dr. Athanalis and Dr. Purchase. Thank you very much. Hoping in your packets, Marianne, everyone received Section C and Section D. And so I want to talk about Section C first, and just for a 30-second review. Again, this is part of the MASC policy review. We're going through each section. My request is not let perfect get in the way of good, and we'll continue to make progress. This is a first reading, so we can go through the policies. I'm going to move rather quickly, and then we can move forward. There are actually 3 sections done, C, D, and E, but I didn't want to do 3 sections tonight, just for time and for stamina. And So we will have another section moving forward. And again, our time frame on this is, we're hoping by the end of the calendar year, we will have all of the sections that we need to. Again, committee, you all know from charting the course, you can all go back and sort of amend, change anything as we move forward. So now moving to Section C. And again, Section C is really about general school administration. And the reason this section is rather thin, and I think it's going to be relatively straightforward, is Section C does not currently exist in the Burlington Policy Manual. Section C doesn't have to, so I don't want anyone to think that this was a sort of in omission. Ms. Presser said some districts have it, some districts don't. It's really about the responsibilities of the administration, superintendent, myself. So in other words, I don't have any Burlington policies to compare these policies to. What you're looking at are the MASC policies that we went through that MASC suggests that are in this section. So again, I think the committee, if they approve these on a second reading, will create a Section C. The school committee might also say, we don't need these, and again, you could, I guess the existing Burlington landscape would be that you don't approve a Section C at all. So with that, again, I'm going to sort of go through very quickly, and then we will move on. So again, this is an MASC policy on administrative goals. And again, we have our 3-year school improvement plans, but the school committee intends to employ qualified personnel to administer the school district efficiently and require the superintendent to organize the administration in a manner that will make clear the functions of each position and the relationships among them. Again, so again, I'm not going to read every single word for you all, but this is sort of goal CA under administrative goals. Again, this CB very broadly defines who hires the superintendent and the responsibilities of the job. So again, you know, a primary responsibility of the school committee is to hire and fire me. The me being the superintendent, not me being me. Superintendent's contract, CBD, this policy defines the parameters of the superintendent's, again, contract. And some of this language is regulatory. So when you look at the policy and it says the legal references, that means there's a state regulation that's attached to it. And the policy is just a very, is sort of a summary of that regulation. So again, that is CBD. CBI, the evaluation of the superintendent. Again, this is also regulatory, and this policy reflects the current state model for educator evaluation. So again, Ms. Presser said that this is an up-to-date policy. That is CBI. CCB, staff relations. Policy defines the chain of command communications for staff. And again, relatively straightforward if you so choose. CE, administrative councils, cabinets, and committees. Again, talks about the superintendent may establish permanent or temporary councils, cabinets, and committees as they deem necessary for assuring staff participation in decision-making, for implementing policies and procedures, and for the improvement of the educational program. So again, relatively straightforward if the committee would like to move forward. CH, policy implementation. Policy covers the implementation of policies and procedures, while Section B has policies that cover the development of policy. This covers the administrative responsibilities of implementation. Again, this is really an administrative-focused section. CHA, CHC, I almost said cha-cha, the cha-cha policy. Development and dissemination of procedures. Again, policy defines that the superintendent and administration are responsible for developing the procedures to implement policy and have the authority to do so. Again, relatively straightforward. CHCA, approval of handbooks and directives. Policy defines when handbooks need the approval of school committee and what parts of the handbook the committee is responsible for approving. Again, I know this committee approves the handbooks every year, but this would be sort of a policy to support that action. CHD, administration in policy absence. Again, policy provides the superintendent authority to take action when there is no guiding policy in place. Again, this is the Al Haig policy where I will take over if there's a problem. So, and my policy CM, school district annual report, again, covers the responsibility of the superintendent regarding an annual report, and that shows up a number of different ways, through the school improvement plan, through my evaluation process, and I think the town also has an annual cover that is there. So, again, we don't have anything to compare this to. A lot of those practices are already in place. This sort of puts policy language behind the regulatory language that we have been following, again, like a student handbook approval. Again, I know I went through this quickly. I don't think, looking at your faces, you need me to go any slower. And are there any questions about Section C? And again, as this is a first reading, that's...
There's a first reading, so we'll have another 2 weeks to think about it, and if people do have comments or questions, they can raise them, and if everything's clear, we can vote on it at the next meeting. And were you thinking of reviewing the Section D, too?
That's on the agenda, so
Okay.
absolutely I was.
All
If
right.
that's, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
policy work is policy
Yes.
work.
Policy
So
work
I
is-
apologize.
Yes. Can I just point out, because we did have a number of policies in Section D, there are actually 2 in almost every case, and so you don't need to read them both. They're very similar. And I want to particularly mention that the reason we have all these Section D policies is because our business manager, Ms. Kasha, created them about 5 years ago, and I think they've been, it's been very successful, and I want to thank you for all that work. So some of the ones that are in the MASC templates are maybe more specific, or maybe one has one item and the other doesn't. So if people want to look at the comparison of the two, that would be, to me, where it would be useful and functional to go through the Section D if you haven't already looked at it. So if you want to just give us
Martha,
some
can I
summary.
just
Pardon,
ask-
Ms. Massardo?
Is part of the service that they're providing like a way to merge the two together for us, or?
In our review of the policies, what they're doing is looking at the Burlington existing policy and the MASC policy, and they might say the Burlington policy is out of date.
Okay.
She would make a recommendation to the MASC policy. She might say the Burlington policy actually provides more detail, and I actually think in one of the cases, she suggested if you could take the top paragraph from the MASC policy and the rest of the Burlington policy, so we'll sort of get to that, to
Okay.
that now. Again, I'm going through sort of my notes from our conversation. Doesn't mean you need to agree with me. I'm just sort of making the recommendation that came out of our conversation.
Okay, I'm just asking because I feel like those sexual harassment ones, they had already been merged, right? And these are still separate. So are we going to get another one where they've been merged?
I'm not sure the language is going to be merged. I think
Okay.
we will get another one if you agree with sort of the direction that MASC is recommending, then Ms. Presser will make an edit, and ultimately you'll see sort of clean Section D.
Okay. Can we have that written so I don't have to write, like you're going to say which one she wants us to keep now, right?
We can follow up.
Okay.
I can clarify my notes.
Okay.
If that's,
Yeah, that's-
absolutely.
Okay.
So there are things like, again, so Ms. Massard, again, I will make sure you have notes. Mary Ann and I will sit down and do this. So fiscal management goal, which is DA, again, the first policy in all of these sections is sort of a summary policy. And MASC said school committee choice. So she's going to leave it up to the committee whether you can choose the MASC or the Burlington policy. Again, honestly, they said school committee choice. And the benefit of, again, even if you choose the Burlington policy, we would reaffirm it and have the date move from 2/18 to 2023. So even if you're updating that, but that was DA. And again, I'm sorry to disappoint, again, Ms. Massardo through the chair. Annual budget, again, is they're saying school committee choice, again, for the MASC language or the Burlington. And again, we'll put this all to you in writing. DBA spending plan, she felt was outdated and unnecessary, so she suggested we get rid of that one. DBC, budget deadlines and schedules, stick with Burlington. DBCA, budget statement, again, outdated and unnecessary. And when she said that, there's typically not an MASC policy for you to compare to, so they just sort of have merged it or did without it. DBD, budget planning, stick with Burlington, but update is what she recommended, because it's 5 years. Again, I'll tell you my exact notes. The two policies have much the same content expressed in different ways. Since the Burlington policy is now about 5 years old, we should make sure that it still reflects current thinking and practice. Yes. DBG, budget adoption procedures. Again, the MASC policy highlights two budget adoption, school committee and town meeting. So she recommended the MASC policy because, again, you first approve the budget as a school committee, it becomes a school committee budget, and then it goes to town meeting. DBJ, budget transfer authority. She thought we could keep Burlington's policy. DBK, periodic review. There's no MASC equivalent, so outdated and unnecessary. DBK.
Ways and Means might object to that.
Huh?
Ways and Means might object to getting rid of it.
They might. So again, you all can put it back in if you like. DD, this is funding proposal and applications. And the MASC policy, because the MASC version was recently updated, the last sentence of the policy was put in place to satisfy auditors that procedures for grant administration would be in place. So again, they're recommending the MASC policy for DD. DEC, federal funds supplement, not supplant policy. That is new and needed, so that is only an MASC policy that we need to add. DFC, building rental fees collection. MASC recommended keeping Burlington. Again, the policies on this topic are generally found in Section K. The policy could reside here, there, or in both places. So she felt, again, the Burlington policy for DFC. Am I doing all right? DGA, authorized signatures. She's recommending the MASC because there's no existing Burlington policy. And again, she just wants to make sure it reflects our practices. So we might need to add language to reflect our practices. And that, again, codifies the process for approving warrants. DH, bonded employees and officers. She said we could keep Burlington. The two policies match, in essence. This is the one,
What letters is this? What
this
letters?
is DI.
DI.
So I will work again with Mary Ann, but what she suggested is insert the MASC first paragraph into the Burlington policy. So again, you all can read it, but the MASC policy, again, the first paragraph, again, to be added to the Burlington policy. I think you have both policies, so we will look at that. I won't read the paragraph. DIE, audits.
Is that for an initial?
They're recommending the MASC, because it's been recently updated version, delineates the various audits that the school district is subject to. So recommending the MASC one. DJ, purchasing. There's no existing Burlington policy, again, unless I missed it, so she is recommending the MASC policy outlines the general responsibilities regarding purchasing, so she wants to add the MASC purchasing. DJR is she wants to eliminate because those are purchasing procedures. Basically, she said the procedures don't need to exist in the policy manual, and they should exist in the business office. So we can create procedures for that are updated. I think we do already have those. DJA, purchasing authority. She wants to add the MASC. I don't believe there's an existing. The MASC policy codifies the ability of the superintendent to approve purchases within cost center appropriations without approval of the committee. Again, you don't care the color of paper or the number of pencils, but if we want to move from supply to a salary, that would require sort of the intent of the budget matters in sort of the approval of the budget. So that's DJA. DJE, procurement requirements. And what basically was recommended by MASC is to keep the Burlington until MASC updates because the law has changed and there's new law, but the regulations haven't been written yet. So MASC is going to update the policy when the regulations are in place, and at that time, we'll take the potential changes to the committee to update DJE. DJG, vendor relations, we can remove that. DK, payment procedures, we can keep Burlington's. Again, the two versions cover much the same content, but there's more information in the Burlington version. DKC, expense reimbursements. Again, there's more detail about approval of travel requests in the Burlington version. The last bullet would seem to restrict travel by any administrator to an out-of-state conference or event such as AASA, which may not be intended. Again, this committee wants to know or approve out-of-state travel, so she said DKC, we should keep Burlington's. DM, handling of cash, and again, she felt this could be removed because it's a procedure, and we can remove it from the policy manual, and I believe these procedures already exist in the business office. So again, these are procedures, not policy. And again, DN is the disposal of furniture and textbooks. Leave Burlington's because there's no MASC equivalent. So again, you'll update that when you update your, if you want to keep it in the policy manual, you'll update that. So I thought that process, having the policies back-to-back, was a more efficient way of getting through it. I know this isn't exciting stuff, but you have these as a first reading. These are the recommendations that MASC made, and they'll be on a future agenda. And Madam Chair, it's important that we make progress, but I don't want to burn people out either. So if you want me to sort of give people a break from policies for a meeting and to only do sort of one a month or something like that, please make sure we have feedback, because I can only spend so much time with these things, and I imagine you are having the same reaction. But we do.
So I would be comfortable of us waiting till we have our second reading on this before you give us the next set. How do other people feel? Mrs. Massardo?
Agree.
That's fine. I have one other
Okay, and
comment.
this is, other people okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Massardo, yes?
Can we reference the select board instead of select men in a lot of these? That's a one like overarching change if we are editing.
Absolutely can, and
Okay.
if I was misspeaking or...
It's in some of the older policies.
Yeah,
It's
we
fine.
absolutely
Yeah.
can make that change when we edit for the second reading.
Any other questions or comments? So at the next meeting, depending on how many comments people have, I might ask for which ones we want to just, sort of like town meeting did, where are there ones where we just want to go straight ahead, and if there are others that people want to have comments on. So, or if you have areas that are particular concern or interest, let me know so we can focus on the ones that people want to comment on. I do, again, want to say that when I looked through, there's a lot of similarity between the two, so I'm not sure it'll be that difficult, but there are a lot of them, so. Ms. Bakasha, did you have another comment for us, where this is clearly your field, and you certainly did did all of, I mean, they're saying the ones we had were often, already right or even better than what they had, so.
I haven't had a chance to review based off of the information Dr. Conti just gave us.
Okay.
On their suggestions, so.
All right.
I might have comments next time.
Good,
but not
okay.
Not right now.
Yes, that's why we get first and second readings, okay? We ready to move on? Okay. So the next item is our school committee summer dates, which we maybe should wait till Ms. Massardo comes back. Oh, she's back, good. All right, so Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am, the two dates that I'm proposing that sort of work with my schedule, we typically meet once in July and once in August. So July 18th is the proposed date for July, and August 22nd would be the proposed date for August. Because we can have hybrid meetings, if any of you are on the French Riviera, we can still, you can, that's true, you can call in. So again, I think those are the two proposed dates.
Is that looking pretty good for everybody?
18 and 22.
18 and 22.
18th and 22nd, okay. All right, and did you want us to vote on that, Dr. Conti? No, that one's a discussion, sorry, the other thing was a vote. And also, did you want to discuss the second meeting in June tonight, Dr. Conti?
Again, I would. I have a point of just a personal request is I have a family, our second meeting in June is on June 27th. Again, school's out on the 16th. I have to be in Denver on the morning of Wednesday, the 28th. And so if everyone's schedules permit, again, I could make changes, but I would be something I wouldn't want to miss. It's a family event. If people's schedules allowed, I was hoping we could have the school committee meeting on Monday, June 26th, that evening. And if not, I understand, but...
So that's something I can do, Ms. Monaco, Ms. Bond? Is that
26th, Monday?
Monday, the 26th.
Go from there.
Okay. Mr. Brooks and Ms. Massardo, does it look good? Okay, sure. I'll give you a minute for that. I also think there was a question about the school building committee wanting to meet at the end of June on a Tuesday, so that might free that up. Okay, so Mr. Brooks, you're good? Ms. Massardo, do you need to check? It's fine? Okay.
June 26th, Monday.
So we'll have our June regularly scheduled school committee meeting on Monday, June 26th, and we will not have the meeting on June 27th.
I better make sure the room's free.
Ah, that's right, is it recreation or something? We'll have to check on that. Okay.
Throw them out.
Marianne, we'll double check the availability.
We'll pull rank.
Yeah,
They start at 6? Uh-oh.
we'll pull rank.
We'll pull rank or
Can we
something.
just clarify, we
Yep,
have
go ahead.
May 23rd, June 13th, also.
We
in the next-
have June 13th and May 23rd.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
All right, so we are good through September, when we are likely to be back on our second and fourth Tuesday of the month schedule. Okay? Any other questions, comments on the schedule?
For May 23rd, I'll be remote.
You will be? Okay, thank you for letting me know. All right, all right, so we are now on to facilities and finance. And Dr. Conti or Ms. Kasha we got our monthly report.
Again, first meeting of the month. Again, Nicole, anything that is this time of year, we just want to make sure we can close out the year, and we're confident that that's can happen. So again, Nicole, if there's anything you want to comment on.
All of our accounts are in good standing. No real significant changes from last month, and no concerns at this time.
Okay, did any of the committee members have any questions or comments on the budget numbers? It looks like I'm pleased that our accommodated account looks like it's coming in at budget. And I know you also send us the capital articles. It looks like there's some projects that have made progress since our last month, so that's always good to see. And I was pleased to see that the Francis Wyman Playground is now complete. No, it's been expended. Is that why the 100%?
I think we have expenditures that are encumbered. Doesn't necessarily
It's
mean that
encumbered, okay.
the project's complete, but the money's spoken for.
Okay, when Mr. Cuna gives us a facilities report, maybe he can update us on that. Okay, thank you. All right, Dr. Conti, fall transportation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It may not be a conversation that we finish this evening, but I just want Nicole to give a brief. There's been some changes in the procurement that we talked about. If you could just mention that to the committee. And then I just want to talk about maybe a different planning process for the fall. So
So at a recent conference that I was at, we were going over just some suggestions for transportation for districts. As you know, like there's not been much competition in just sort of different ways that we can possibly look into how we're advertising these, like the age of buses and all a bunch of other different factors to sort of help get us the best price with the same level of service. They're also recommending that we sort of nail down what we're going to be advertising over the summer and try to get those out early in the fall. In post, typically it's a 2-week, but they're asking us to advertise those out for a little bit longer to see if we can gain some more interest and competition there. So probably like a 4-week advertisement. So something we're going to be working on over the summer.
So again, it'll be probably brought up at our summer meetings. We'll be talking about those expectations, but I think the prior procurements might have happened later in the year, so I don't want it to be a surprise to anyone that they're recommending a much earlier procurement process because they're trying to enhance competition. So, and the other thing that I wanted to discuss with fall transportation is Bob usually does, the expectation of the committee is that we schedule our bus routes for seat.
Excuse me, can we just see if anyone has any comments on the procurement issue? Yes, Mr. Brooks.
When can we expect the draft RFP, and then how long are we running the RFP for this transportation?
So I think the suggestion was to run for a 4-week advertisement. And I think over the summer, we're going to start working on draft of those, so definitely before it goes out, you
When
guys can see a
do
draft
we
of
expect
that.
to see a draft, though? Or do we see a draft through us for that proposal?
Maybe
August?
our August meeting.
Okay.
I'll shoot for that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I just wanted to add that last week, I was at a meeting with MASC and school committee members from across the state, and this is an issue across the state. It's something that's a problem where most school districts are finding there isn't any competition in the bidding. So I'm glad that there's some people working to try to address that concern. And I also know that at least Ms. Massardo and I have been talking about trying to figure out if there are ways we can include electric buses in our fleet and how to do that. I know there's people here that there's these huge grants, and I know that the huge grants are mostly for, large cities and things like that. We may or may not be eligible for that kind of thing, but we would like to be sure that the RFP includes that kind of, or I would like to, and Ms. Massardo can speak for herself, but make sure that any ways that we can attempt to turn our fleet over into electric buses would be important. And I know we don't own the buses, but what are all the different options? And if we need to meet more often or have a subcommittee, we do have a transportation subcommittee that maybe would want to meet with you to talk about those things. And I know Mr. Cunha has a lot of the operations end of this, whereas you are more about the contract, I think. So I'd like to know if we can have that be part of the conversation before we put the RFP out. Is that realistic? Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question, but I think more.
Is it on
I
the
think
next
Dr.
topic?
Conti, well, still buses.
Okay.
But I think Dr. Conti is going to talk some more about the fall. Okay, go first.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Conti.
Madam Chair, so Bob and Peg Allegretto from his office do an incredible job adjusting the bus routes in the fall, because our typical planning expectation from the committee is for us to provide a seat for every student in the district. And so we create the bus routes, and then usually the first 2 weeks, a bus could stop at a bus stop because there are students who live in that area, but none of those students are taking the bus, and so there's no students there, and then we make sort of adjustments those first 2 weeks. One of the things that we discussed is thinking about this a little bit differently and sending a survey out to parents and asking them if they are sort of definitely not planning on using the bus. And let's say 300 parents say, I'm going to drive my child, again, encouraging everyone to use the bus and making sure that we have enough room for everyone if that's what they so choose. But if we could do our initial design, Bob, you mentioned, with excluding those families, it may cause fewer changes in the fall. And again, we're still going to have changes, and a family who says, I definitely don't want the bus, but their life situation changes, and then they do, if they give us a couple weeks, we could sort of get them back in. We're not talking about limiting transportation, but I'm just saying if we could get that information ahead of time. Bob, you felt like you could do some of the routing sooner?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've discussed this at many previous meetings, and from a parent perspective, also from a staff perspective, students, of course, the first month of school, usually we say no adjustments for the first 2 weeks because we need to make sure that the students are showing up to the stops. After 2 weeks, we make the initial adjustments to the stops that aren't being used, and then we continue to make adjustments to benefit the parents and students of Burlington, especially for the first month and further into the year. We typically do see a large number of students that don't ride the bus, maybe not at the middle school, at some elementary, and definitely at the high school. So it would save us a lot of time, not only in programming and routing, but of course the emails and changes that come into play afterwards. So it's definitely something that we'd like to consider. And as Dr. Conti mentioned, we take numerous requests to make changes throughout the year anyways. So if circumstances did change, if we had some notice, then we could obviously make those adjustments in a timely manner.
And again, Madam Chair, I just want to stress that we are not limiting families' ability for transportation. I think this committee has been clear that any student who requires bus transportation, it will be provided, so I want to make sure I stress that. We're just asking them if their current plans are not to take a bus seat in the fall, and because the high school is interested in going back to their original start time at 8:30, because we had to bump it to 8:40. And there are some drop-off issues, so I think if we're asking the bus company to solve some other problems with us, if there are fewer students that factor in, we might see some different solutions. So I just wanted to maybe inform the committee, but if the committee still wants us to sort of schedule for everybody, then we can certainly continue to schedule for everybody.
Okay, Mrs. Monaco?
Yeah, I was going to ask you to make a priority of getting the high school start time back to where it was. And I think that your idea about surveying the parents makes sense, especially at the high school. I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense at the other levels, but do whatever floats your boat. But the high school, I think you're far more likely to make a difference that way.
Okay, Mrs. Bond?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to survey the parents as well, because I think it helps you get ahead of the game a little bit and plan a little bit better. And like I said, it's not that you're saying you can't change it if their circumstances change, so I'm in favor.
Ms. Massardo?
Yeah, I'm also in favor. Obviously, I think I would love us to get the bus routes out before 7 p.m. on the night before school starts. So if this helps with that, I'm all in favor. I also committed to getting more students on the bus. So if part of that survey includes why don't you want to take the bus, and that we can incorporate that into our RFP or our progress for the year, I think that would be really helpful information. I would love to have a subcommittee meeting. I think I'm interested in if we can maybe slightly expand the expected walking distance to bus stops, if we can consolidate some stops, things like that, especially if we have better insight into who's taking the bus, et cetera. I'd be willing to go out on a limb and say you only get a spot on the high school bus if you pre-register. Obviously, it's free, and obviously you can get one, and maybe we provide a 2-week notice or something like that. But, or you only get a stop, right? Because I think that's where we know a large portion don't take the bus. But I'd love to explore, I don't know what the software is, but if we tweak this, does it reduce the time on the route? If we tweak this, does it, how does it work? So I think we have a lot of options, and if we're thinking about it now, I think we'll be in good shape.
So before you respond, Mr. Cuna, I wanted to say I think it's a good idea. I like this direction. I'm also a little concerned about unexpected consequences, so it doesn't sound like anyone here has that approach, but to keep an eye on unexpected consequences of doing it. It does sound like it would be a good plan, and I also would support having the subcommittee meet with Mr. Cuna and whoever to, and we have, it's Ms. Brond and Ms. Massardo, yeah, and maybe that the three of you could find ways to create a survey or whatever. And yes, Mr. Cuna.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a 2-second overview. Most of you are familiar with this, but others at home may not be. So currently we have 18 buses, and that is divided amongst 3 tiers. So we have 18 buses first at the middle school, 18 buses split across 3 elementary schools, Fox Hill, Pine Glen, and Memorial. And then when it gets to the 3rd tier, we have Francis Wyman and the high school, and those 18 buses are split across that. So they're kind of proportional based on the number of students that ride them, and that can fluctuate every year as well, too. So usually what happens is on the first schedule that does go out late in August, you'll have more riders for that particular bus than are actually on it because we're anticipating a seat for every student. So I do think that, this option would help us get a better narrowed down ridership number earlier on in the year, help us a little bit quicker adapt to the new routes. Obviously, every single year we have some staple bus stops, but because of where placements are of housing and children, a lot of those stops move every single year too. So there's really not exactly consistency. And we do hear that issue come up a lot where maybe a stop has been in a particular area for a number of years, but now as students move or grow into a new school, the younger students come up maybe in a different location. So again, anything that we can do to obviously kind of speed this up and eliminate the number of changes that get posted on the website, I think would be a little bit convenient for the parents.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I have one.
Yes, Ms. Massaro.
I don't know when and if the school choice applications come in over the summer, but I would love us to think twice about some of these, because every school choice at the elementary school level is a guaranteed car on the road. So we don't provide them with bus service, and they're going to school out of their district. So I know you look at all of them very carefully and like to grant them, but I think the school choice at the elementary school is a guaranteed car on the road and not a bus. So that's something to think about.
And you're referring to the internal to Burlington school option to go to a different school district in Burlington, not the other school choice program that we have. Yes, Dr. Conti, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, just it's May 1st is the deadline, and so that deadline has come, and we've already notified parents. So for next year, we can talk about it for next year.
Okay. Ms. Monaco?
Dr. Conti, do you know how many students are in, even roughly?
Mean who are
Burlington
attending out
residents
of
that-
district?
out of their own neighborhood school?
I'm going to take a guess, but what I do know is it balances out. So there's not one school. We have as many students sort of choosing Fox Hill as choose Francis Wyman, as choose Pine Glen,
Right.
as choose
Okay.
Memorial. And again, I'll get you those numbers, but it's not skewing the enrollment in any place. And it's really K that matters, because once the student starts first grade, for instance, we assume they're going to be a second grade, third grade, fourth grade. So once they're built in, we sort of build them in. But your point about transportation is a good one, because for families who choose an out-of-district elementary school, which is really the only choice that they have in Burlington, we're not providing transportation. So the parents would need to commit to providing transportation.
So my response to all of this is that the reason that we have the opportunity for people to send their children to an elementary school different from their neighborhood elementary school is based on serving the needs of the students of Burlington. So way back before we had this opportunity, someone who had a child who was with a daycare provider who lived in the Wildwood or Francis Wyman district, but the daycare provider was in the Pine Glen district, then the child could go to school from the daycare provider's home. And that was one of the initial reasons. Over the years, many more reasons have come up, but they're all based on serving the people of Burlington, the parents and the kids. And to take that away in order to take a few cars off the road, I think would be unfair to the families in town.
Dr. Conti?
Yeah, Robin Miliano is...
Someone has the answer.
sending
Our wonderful student information officer.
She probably said probably 100 families, and potentially, she said slightly more at Fox Hill because we redistricted on Avalon Street, but again, about 100 families distributed across the 4 schools.
So the point about that redistricting is that there were maybe 4th, 5th graders who didn't want to go to a new school, wanted to stay where they were.
Yeah.
And so we allow them to do that, regardless of the fact that it means transportation has to be provided.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions on this right now? Can I ask the Transportation Subcommittee to get back to Mr. Cuna and follow up on that fall planning issue? Will that, can you folks? Okay, would you get in touch with our committee? And would you follow up and do that? Thank you very much. Okay, good. All right, the next issue is the summer work schedule.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to hand that to Mr. Cuna.
As soon as I said it, I thought, wait a minute. You're right.
So through the chair, I guess this is a first time being brought in front of the committee, but a practice that's been happening in previous years. We want all of our staff to take advantage of the summertime, spend time with their families and so forth. But we also want to maximize the amount of time working, within the buildings. So what we've proposed in previous years is working a 4-day weeks, taking that same typical 40 hours over 5 days and reducing it to 4 days and extending the length of time here. So that could be more productivity, whether you're on a computer, more productivity when you're stripping floors in the classroom, or and so forth. And we've had positive and good luck with it in the past. People really do like doing it. So we've proposed it again to this year. Typically, there's 2 unions that we propose this to, and that is the clerical and custodial union. The administrators seem to be flexible and adapt to that quickly, but these 2 unions, it is a change in work conditions, so we produce a side letter. They vote on that, and then the signature page that you see in front of you is the unions voting and accepting on that change in working conditions. And now, again, this is temporary, so the dates of when it starts and when it ends, make this contractual. And like I said, they have already approved this, and this is something that has happened for numerous years. So again, with your approval, your support, we'd like to continue it this year.
So do I have a motion?
Do we need a vote? It said discussion.
Oh, well, do you think we need a vote? Would you like us to vote? What's up, Dr. Conti?
It says vote, but
Yeah. What's your
Yes,
pleasure?
please.
Okay,
So moved.
I'd like to make a motion
Second.
to approve the 4-day work schedule.
Oh, second. It's all good.
all right. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? And the chair votes aye. That's 500. And thank you to all of our staff who work through the summer, and I'm glad we're able to do this.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to the memorandum agreements, if that's okay with you.
Yes?
Bob, again, I want to make sure I thank Mr. Cuna for all his work in working with the ASME unions, custodian, cafeteria, the instructional assistants and clerical in Burlington, and reaching an agreement to extend their current contract through fiscal '24, and that really allowed us the budget certainty that we could build into the fiscal '24 budget that was just approved by town meeting, and Nicole could build in those costs. So Bob, I'm not sure if you want to add anything, but I do want to thank the unions for their participation and willingness to agree to a 1-year memorandum of agreement or understanding. And this brings, again, all of our union contracts will be terminating June 30th of 2024.
Mr. Cuna?
again, through the chair, thank you. So, no, you did a great job explaining it. I also wanted to thank the unions for the cooperation. It does bring, like Dr. Conti mentioned, all of our unions in line with not only compensation for the 3% for the fiscal year coming up, but also, again, extending their contracts to end at the same time as well, too. So next year will be a big negotiation year for all the unions, but it takes the edge off of the upcoming year a little bit, just to know that there's some certainty in the dollars being spent.
Okay, so, I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Yes, question.
I just want to know what the difference, the school office, it's just a slightly different agreement. Do they have an open contract?
This is not what we're discussing.
Oh.
This is the next, this is about the contracts. I'm sorry.
I can explain it if
I'm
you,
sorry.
through the
This
chair.
is the right one. It's the other one. I
Okay.
apologize.
No, okay.
So, I apologize.
Oh, is
Please
it
go
okay?
ahead and
Okay.
state it.
Well, so this one says reopen the current contract and the other ones are just extent? I just don't know the difference.
Through the chair, if I may. So,
Yes, please, Mr.
2 years ago, we negotiated the clerical contract, so they are 1 year behind.
Okay.
The cafeteria, custodians, and the IAs. So the IAs have the three that I just mentioned, cafeteria, custodial, and IAs have a 1 year extension in front of you. The clerical contract had a reopener clause because they accepted a lower percentage than other unions had accepted, and their contract ends next year. So that language is really bringing them up to the 3% that other unions got for next year only. So it's not an extension. It's just different language for that 1 year.
That makes sense.
So if we can take a vote on each one separately?
Yes.
I move we approve the memorandum of agreement with AFSME 93 Local 1703 Burlington School Office Personnel and the Burlington School Committee.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair votes aye, so 500.
I move we approve AFSME 93 Local 1703 Burlington School Cafeteria employees in the town of Burlington's
I'll second it.
memorandum of agreement.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Chair votes aye, that's 500.
I move we approve 93 Local 1703 Burlington custodial staff in the town of Burlington School Committee memorandum of agreement.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair votes aye. That's 500. And I think there's one more.
That's all I've got.
IAs? Did we do IAs? Did we do 4?
IA and clerical is one, right?
It's already
No.
done.
No.
Oh, then I only have 3 also.
Is that because that's the one that's a reopener? In the original packet online, yes, that's right. In our meeting
Got it?
packet, Chris. Do
All
you
right,
have them all?
Eric's got it. Here, I'll read it. Is that the right one?
Wait a minute.
This one's already signed.
Agenda. What day did she send us the
Signed by Catherine,
agenda?
yeah.
You got it?
There was clerical.
Here we go.
Thank you, Marion.
Here we go. This one was signed already, that's why it wasn't in the packet tonight.
I
Okay.
move we approve AFSME 93 Local 1703 Burlington Instructional Assistant Employees and the Town of Burlington School Committee Memorandum of Agreement.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the chair votes aye. That's 500. I want to thank all of our custodians and cafeteria workers and instructional assistants and office staff for all of what they do and helping us in this effort to coordinate the contracts. Thank you.
Again,
Great.
Madam Chair and committee, thank you. That was important.
All right, and now, Mr. Cuna, do you have updates for the Fox Hill School Building Committee?
Yes, so again, through the chair, thank you. We did have an SBC meeting, School Building Committee, on May 2nd. We met with both the design team and also our OPM, collectively with the SBC. We were informed that we are still in the collection phase. We had some traffic study updates presented to us, but those are also ongoing. The design firm is further looking into some hazmat and siting concerns, including the permitting and zoning issues regarding the borders and wetlands. So they're looking into the Wilmington property line, also the Vernal Pool property as well, where that zone would allow us to build on the property. So again, I still want to stress that we're in the collection phase right now, determining some information that we would need to make some decisions down the road. We do have a next SBC meeting on the 16th, so 5/16, May 16th, and we have a community meeting on 5/18. The community meeting is virtual only, but the SBC meeting on 5/16 is virtual and in person here at the high school.
Thank you. And the community forum on May 18th, I don't know, Ms. Massardi, do you want to say more about it? It's going to be a presentation, is that accurate? And with opportunity for questions and answers? There may not be anything else to add, but I want to make sure we're clear.
Correct.
Okay.
I was just going to say, how is that communicated out to the community?
It is posted on the town website currently. It went to town meeting members. It went to all parents at the schools. Martha and I actually are going to bring flyers to town meeting tomorrow night. It is posted at the senior center, and I believe BCAT has a hold of it as well.
And through the chair, mailings went out as well, too.
Oh, mailings went to abutters, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think there were some people at Pine Glen that were concerned that they weren't getting notified, so that's going out to everybody. That's what I wanted to double check.
It went out to all teachers. Terry did the, I forget, Reach My Teach, I believe this is the new software. It went out to all staff and families as well.
Okay. All right. Dr. Conti, did you have anything you want to add to that, to this part of the conversation?
No, I know there was a request to add Pine Glen to the agenda, and again, that omission was mine, so I again apologize to the committee. We'll be adding sort of the Pine Glen, because that's being considered as an option as part of this project to the standing agenda. So again, Madam Chair, I do apologize for that omission.
Okay, thank you. And any other comments or questions on the Fox Hill School Building Committee right now? Okay. The next item is that, we have some comments and questions. Please come up. And yes, I asked you to wait till we talked about it on this discussion, so please come up. And if you could speak your name so clearly, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Is this on?
Is the green light on?
It is on.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
So I am Amanda Hannafin. I know that the school committee and Dr. Conti had received an email from me last week, and I've been in contact with some of you over the weekend and into early this week. Just for those of you who maybe don't know me, I am a fifth grade teacher at Pine Glen, but more importantly, I am a mother of 2 future Burlington students. I currently live in the Pine Glen district, so the issue I'm speaking on tonight really resonates with me both on a professional level, but also on a personal level, on a mother level. I'm really here to push for and really raise awareness to the lack of representation on the building committee at Fox Hill, or the school building committee it's been referred to, because my understanding is that is the group of people who will ultimately be making the decision as to how we move forward with the Fox Hill building project, whether that be just redoing Fox Hill, combining Pine Glen and Fox Hill, or having 2 schools in one building. I will start off by saying I do appreciate from hearing from the members I have heard from. I appreciate you giving me the attention and time on this matter. My discussions with those of you who I have spoken to have assured me that at the next building committee meeting, there will be discussion about adequate representation for Pine Glen. I want to make sure that that is definitely on the agenda, and I was assured that Mr. Lyons has been in part of the discussions. A big concern I have is even on the website, Mr. Lyons is not listed on the actual committee list, but more importantly, he's not listed as a voting member on that list as of yesterday when I checked that. So although he may be part of the discussions, his say doesn't really hold weight. At this point in time, as a Pine Glen staff, we have not had the opportunity to share our professional opinions. We have had one meeting with the architects, and the kind of objective of that meeting was really to share what we would like to see in a future school. Nowhere in there were we asked to share kind of our input as professional educators as to what we thought were best for our Pine Glen students in our community. So although Mr. Lyons has been conferred with you guys on some of these discussions, I don't think it's fair to say that Pine Glen staff has been represented at this point in time. I do agree that adding him to this committee is imperative, and I hope to see that happen soon. But more importantly, I really think there needs to be more representation for Pine Glen families, both current and future families. My I am going to be a future family of Pine Glen. Like I said, I currently live in the Pine Glen district, but I have many neighbors with young children whom I talked to this weekend, many of which weren't even aware of all the logistics of what is actually going on in town. So I think that the families that are actually going to be directly impacted by this decision, if Fox Hill, that building committee, chooses to in any way change where Pine Glen is located, where those students are located, they need a seat at that table, and they deserve a seat at that table. When this building committee was originally formed, many people, including myself, were kind of under the impression that although the state required us to consider combining Pine Glen and Fox Hill, or whether that be combining the buildings into one with shared cafeteria gym, the school committee did take a vote in which all members at that time agreed to keep the 4 schools. So my understanding, and I think many of my neighbors' understanding, was that Pine Glen, although it was being considered, it was kind of off the table. We didn't really need to fight for a voice in that committee at that time. From what I'm hearing now, this is still being considered. I know 2 school committee members recently just visited a school in Springfield, looking at the 2 schools combined in one to see kind of what that would look like. And I knew I got some feedback on that from some of my colleagues who also attended that. And it sounds like this is a discussion that is genuinely being considered. And it's concerning to me that Pine Glen does not have a voice at this point. So I think that that might be why we didn't hear from Pine Glen families at the beginning. And I think right now there's really not a lot of clear direction as to what is being discussed at this board or these committee meetings. And I think that Pine Glen parents and Pine Glen future parents really need to be aware of that. And like I said, have a voice there. I do have a couple questions, even after talking to you, and Bob, you actually answered one of mine, and that was, when will the next committee meeting take place? It sounds like that's going to take place on May 16th, which is great. Like I said, I was assured that Pine Glen would be a topic in that meeting, and I'm just curious, how will we find out the outcome of those discussions? Will that be shared publicly? Like, we're talking about getting Pine Glen more representation at that meeting. How will we be notified about the outcome of that discussion at that 5/16 meeting?
Okay, I would like to try to ask and maybe answer one question first, which is one of your questions.
Yeah.
When we created the last committee, it went through your office, Dr. Conti, and I'm not completely sure how the Fox Hill staff got chosen. And, you know, we had categories of people who would be members. And I think it makes sense to expand what we had from the beginning because of the conversations that have been going on. But so if we wanted to change the makeup of the school building committee, would that come from this group, or would that come from the school building committee? Do you know who has the authority to do that, and how we would do that? Or perhaps Mr. Kuna knows you originally, at that time, you were talking a lot with the MSBA people. We now have a project manager and a designer who work a lot with the MSBA and may know more about how we would address adding other members to the committee. If you could. Yeah.
Sure. I think if I can backtrack by saying, how did we form the first committee? There's a template on MSBA's website that they provide us, and we have to plug in names, and where they have the superintendent, the town business manager, the finance manager, and so forth, and then it gets into the building principal for the school that we've submitted. And then there is a blank field at the end where you can add more people, right? So at that time, yes, the focus definitely was more on a representative teacher from Fox Hill and a representative parent from Fox Hill residency in that area. Obviously, throughout the time of the SBC, we have updated that based on either people leaving or people joining. So again, that would be an SBC discussion that would need to be brought up in front of the committee for people to join. And that's at, the discretion of the SBC meeting, or the chair.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other input on that? Ms. Pissardo?
I just want to answer the last part of the question.
Okay.
It's an open meeting.
Yeah.
So you don't need to
But
find out
I'm not concerned
afterwards.
about as much of attending the meeting as I am about getting voting members on that committee.
No, I understand, but you asked how we find out the results. You can watch the
And
meeting
when
or
will
come
those
to the
minutes be
meeting.
posted? Right, but if I'm not able to catch the meeting, will we be notified that this is the process we are going to follow to get more Pine Glen representation? That meeting on 5/16, that should be on your agenda.
Correct.
What is going to be the next steps? How are we going to recruit Pine Glen?
I think that will be the discussion at that meeting.
And will that just be up to Pine Glen staff and future families and current families to then look at the agenda to look to see what the outcome of that was? Or will you
I
as a
have to find
committee-
out how we solicited the teachers and the parent from Fox Hill. But at the very least, I expect to have the conversation of adding Mr. Lyons as a voting member on the 16th will be on the agenda, and you'll
And
be
I
able to
think that's
find that out
great first step.
as watching the meeting.
But I do think Pine Glen parents are completely in the dark as far as what I think Fox Hill, like Bob said, this is worded funny because it's worded as the Fox Hill building project, Fox Hill School, Fox Hill, that's all you hear. But in the fine print, Pine Glen is involved a lot in there. So I think a parent who's juggling kids, juggling sports, juggling life, not keeping up with school committee meetings like the teacher I am, might be missing this. And I think that you're not doing your due diligence on that building committee if we are not then taking that step, having that discussion, and then saying we need to get as many voices as we can or as many people to step in. I understand obviously you can't have every parent, every teacher, things like that, but following that process. And I know that it sounds like there was a state-regulated form that certain people were on there. And my concern was this, it sounds to me like this decision's gonna be made in the fall about what direction we're going. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct? Fall is in September, fall is in, when does this decision need to be made?
Ms. Massardo?
I think we do not have a board date that we have to present to the MSBA board meeting, and we do not have a date for that yet, so.
But it will be in 2023, before
It
the
should
close
be.
of this year.
Mr. Cunha?
I shouldn't have speak, sorry. Through the chair, yeah, I'm not aware of a date that's been presented to us. We've heard something about late fall, and it could be up until January.
Okay.
But we don't have a date. We have to present, get on state's schedule. So again,
Okay.
we're not even at a phase right now
No,
to
and I
make
know
that
it's the beginning
recommendation.
phase. I think, and I understand that. I understand no decisions are being made at this next meeting. I think my concern really revolves around the fact that once this ball gets moving, we're talking about making a decision the end of this year. You don't even have Pine Glen people on there, never mind our building principal. You don't even have him as a voting member as of today. So maybe this 5/16 meeting, we will add him. Okay, so that's taking away staff, or that's at least checking the staff box. But my bigger concern here, I'm gonna put my mom hat on, that I want resident. I want current Pine Glen families being represented. And Mr. Lyons is a great boss, love working under him, and he will do a good job of representing his staff if we are given time to share with him before. I mean, school is only another month and a half. Is he gonna have opportunities to get staff input? Like I said, at this point, we have not had that. But assuming he is added as a voting member, he will be able to give that input. But a bigger picture here is the community we're serving. So I
So-
think that we need to push to get that done as soon as possible.
I think this is an important conversation. Am I correct? It's going to be on the agenda at the next school building committee meeting. When we applied for the state grant, we didn't know that they were going to require us to be considering the Pine Glen situation. So I can see how we ended up here, but I think given that we ended up here, it's important for us to address it. And it sounds like it's on the agenda, and we'll need to discuss. We have, not every member is a voting member, not every teacher from Fox Hill is a voting member, that kind of thing. So we do need to have that conversation, I think, and it sounds like we're on board to do that. Is there another issue? Mr. Cunha and then Ms. Monaco.
I just, through the chair, wanted to state for the record that I'm a Pine Glen parent and a voting member, so.
Yes, that's
But I
right.
think as though, and like I said in my email, I know you weren't on that, Bob, you are speaking through your professional role, and I appreciate your parent input, and I appreciate Mr. Brooks, your parent input, but you guys are also wearing kind of dual hats there. And I understand me as a staff member, and I am also wearing a dual hat. However, I want to maybe get another parent representative who can just solely speak as a parent. And nothing against the two of you who are on it, but I do think there's a different objective when you are wearing your professional role as a,
Mrs.
while you're on that
Monaco?
committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to make the point also that in the current Fox Hill Building Committee group, we have parents, but we don't have any of the immediate neighbors of the Fox Hill School. And I think that's something else that, another group of people that should be represented.
All right, is there something someone would like to add about this topic? Okay.
So just
Thank you for bringing
just to
those
clarify, is
concerns.
this meeting that will happen on 5/16, I will have to check the minutes or follow the meeting? Or can I hear from you as to how that, Ms. Massardo, would that be from you? Okay, so I'll look forward to hearing from you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for bringing this to us. Yes. All right, are we ready to move on to the, I'm sorry. Do we have anyone else who wanted to speak on this issue?
I think they all do.
Okay, okay. If you could first start with your name, please.
My name is Laura Perillo. I am a parent of 2 Pine Glen alumni. We started our journey at Pine Glen in the fall of 2014 and finished up last year in the spring of 2022. Thank you for your time in letting me speak about the Fox Hill Building Project. Our family moved to the Pine Glen District just prior to the start of our oldest child's kindergarten year, and we're so very glad that we did. Both of my children had a positive experience at Pine Glen with their teachers, school personnel, and administrators, and with the school community. We often felt fortunate to be at the smallest of the Pine Glen elementary schools, taking advantage of the small class sizes and often enjoying great social events that Pine Glen had to offer, such as their Halloween dances and spring carnivals. The benefit, however, was most especially felt during COVID. I can't possibly imagine having come through that very difficult time at a much larger school. While I hope that a COVID never occurs again, I do think that it is a reason to consider the merits of keeping our neighborhood school model. Well, it is evident that the children of Burlington would benefit from something being done about the condition of both the Fox Hill and Pine Glen buildings. The answer is not combining the districts. Given the status that Burlington enjoys as an upper middle class suburb with a strong school district, the community, particularly the students, current and future, deserve the preservation of the independent 4-school neighborhood districts as a model of educational equity and community engagement. I wonder about the proposal of a larger school in place of 2 smaller ones. How will that sense of community be altered? How will the curriculum and services remain equitable for those students who need equal access the most? How would my own children have felt if they were beginning their educational career in an environment similar in size and scope to that of a middle school? Will Burlington remain as a desirable town to live in for families looking for that small neighborhood experience? While feasibility studies are being conducted, I hope that consideration is being given to both the tangibles and intangibles of maintaining the current neighborhood school model. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any comments from the committee? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? We have someone else who moved up front. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Niedermeyer. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of many families in the community in regard to our concern with the management of the Fox Hill Building Project. And the last time I spoke in front of you was in 2019 with concerns about a large school being placed in our neighborhood. Over the last few months, my neighbor has been repeatedly telling me that the 5-0 vote from the school committee to keep the 4-school model had been overturned, and I honestly didn't believe her. It was months where she was telling me this, and I said, no, that would never happen. Our school committee would never let that happen. They would not just let it go and then not say anything, right? Yet I'm here once again, much to my incredible disappointment, asking you all to please not put a mega elementary school anywhere in Burlington, especially not in the middle of a quiet neighborhood. Since this is on the table again, a bunch of community members and myself have spent hours researching what a larger versus smaller elementary school means for the children of Burlington. School consolidations of elementary schools have been on the rise in the U.S. since 1930. So in the last 100 years, many scholars have published articles stating the benefits of smaller schools. For context, a small school in the articles that I've cited is about the population of 300 to 500 students. Common threads in regards to the benefits of small schools versus a larger school: number one, trust. Small schools form a more trusted relationship between students and their school community. This trust leads to children and teachers to feel more connected. Through connectedness, students, especially those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, achieve higher test results, stay in school longer, participate in more extracurricular activities, experience fewer exposures to school violence, have better attendance, receive less administrative supported disciplinary action, and have a school experience where they feel more included and cared for by teachers and support staff. For a personal example, Mrs. Shields called me when my daughter was in 2nd grade and said, "She's been down here twice with a stomach ache. I know your kid. She doesn't complain. Something's wrong." My daughter ended up in the operating room at Mass General with appendicitis that afternoon. She saved my daughter's life. For our family, the transition from Fox Hill, a small school, to MSMS, a large school, has been difficult. Losing the close relationships and feelings of connectedness we felt with teachers in the administration at Fox Hill has been one of the hardest parts of this transition. We feel like we went from a place of comfort and community to a place we somewhat jokingly call the Thunderdome. This has made us even more appreciative and thankful for our small elementary school experience. I keenly remember the anxiety and fears we harbored taking our children to their first days of school. Thankfully, we also remember the time and attention the staff and teachers at Fox Hill gave to us to make us feel comforted and confident that our children were in the best and most safe place. As a school committee, please consider, will a school double in size be able to recreate these positive feelings of safety and community that all parents of elementary students in Burlington deserve? What will bringing a 5-year-old neurodiverse, neurotypical, disabled, or anxious child to a large school realistically be like for kids and families? To quote Stephen Covey, trust is the foundation of all relationships. Once broken, it is nearly impossible to get back. As a community, we used our votes to elect you and trusted you as a school committee to do what is best for our children's education. We trusted you to represent our voice and uphold the 5-0 vote in favor of the existing 4 elementary school model. This mega school is now being considered by a committee who has no accountability to our community, who was not elected by our community, and lacks proper representation of the community. There's a narrative in our community that this mega school is a done deal, that there is nothing the school committee or any member of the community can do to stop the town from moving forward with this mega school. I am urging you to stop this narrative. You are losing the trust and the respect of the community you are serving. Please, please do your jobs. Work for what's best for our students and community instead of the bottom line. That is why we elected you. That is why you are sitting in those seats. We are a community that values our neighborhood and our 4 elementary school model. Please do more to show us that you care about our students, their education, and most importantly, respect your positions as trusted officials that were elected to do what is best for our future, our children, and their education. Thank you so much for your time and your hard work.
Thank you. Does anyone want to comment? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate that. You came to tell us how you're feeling, what you think. Dr. Conti, do you have anything to add before we move to the next agenda item?
No, I think clearly people need an opportunity to provide input, and I think we should create the opportunity.
All right, so we will move on now to the next agenda item. There are any updates on the Burlington High School plan at this point?
No, we just have an important conversation with town meeting coming up. Article 30 is a feasibility study for the high school. It is a big ask, so I think our ability to discuss with town meeting the importance of having a plan, a multi-year plan, to allow us to make better financial choices for this building. As I think Mr. Sagarino stated, the community has lots of building projects that are coming up. I would say we have 3 of our school buildings that how I like to think about it is those buildings don't match the talent of the teachers within them, so they become a limiting factor. And so we really need to, this would be much easier if we were just talking about one school and one state project. And it's hard to explain all the details to everyone where the state is requiring us to sort of broaden that view. But again, I don't think we can lose track of, we have 3 schools that really need some sort of thinking and planning. And these decisions, it's so important to involve the community, because if Pine Glen and the current Fox Hill and the current high school are any indicator, Bob, Pine Glen was open when? So again, these are 50, 60-year decisions. So I do think taking some time, I do think the work now is about program identification, and I think, again, I don't want to get people lost in that, but I do think we can take our time in having the opportunity to have people weigh in to make this decision. So again, that's just would be my 2 cents. I had a request for an up-to-date enrollment, so Mrs. Miliano put this together for the committee. So again, I want to make sure I answer the question. There's really nothing on the high school until I hope tomorrow night's town meeting, if not a week from Monday, depending if we get through the warrant. And again, I think we can look at that. So.
And these numbers are as of like this week? Is that what this is?
Yeah, these are very recent. Again, this is, again, correct incoming K. And again, you can,
Oh, okay.
you know, again, Fox Hill has 2 5-grade sections.
Okay, if I could just
please.
first, this is for next school year. It's
Next
not
school.
as of today. It's what we're expecting as of today for next school year, for the 23-24 school year. So go ahead.
So no, at top of the page, again, 23, 24, yes. And so we'll expand this as we go, because I know class size is important to the committee, again, but you all know in general, Fox Hill is a 4 homeroom school per grade. There are 5 at second and third. Again, Memorial is a 4 homeroom school. I think there's going to be an adjustment at first and second. And again, Pine Glen is a 3-section school. Francis Wyman is a 5-section school. So again, we'll do class size counts for you, but our class sizes, again, look very good. I think there is we can put a comparison year to year, but there is a slightly lower, our enrollment is not as high. And again, you can see, as we had talked about the trend, the middle school and high school are really not that far apart. So so I think that we have some smaller class sizes, smaller enrollments, again, across the district, but these are the latest numbers that we have.
And just for people who are listening, I'm just going to read the totals. So expected for next year at Fox Hill would be 438 students. At Memorial, 379 students. At Pine Glen, 315 students. At Francis Wyman, 475 students, with a total of 1,607 elementary students in the district. And we are expecting 860 students at the Marshall Simons Middle School and 904 students at Burlington High School. Obviously, these numbers change somewhat, but it gives us our projections. Mrs. Monaco.
I would like to point out that both the kindergarten and grade 1 numbers are based on this year's kindergarten and those who've signed up for next year's kindergarten, right? So typically what happens is we get more first graders because we get kids who come in from other schools who've already gone to kindergarten elsewhere. And we get more kindergartners because they either move in or haven't signed up or whatever. So my expectation is that both the kindergarten number and the grade 1 number will be larger when school begins in September or August or whenever it is, than what we have on this paper. So I think that we're likely to have actually a substantially larger number from right now.
Yeah, from those grades. So with any enrollment, put a date on it because it could change tomorrow. So, and what we'll see is, as Mrs. Monaco said, especially historically, different schools have different trends. Francis Wyman always has a significant increase in the number of kindergarten students from when we sort of ask in June and when we look at it again in August. So it's just a pattern. So again, I was requested that where we're snapshot, here's your snapshot. And again, it will change. So,
Okay. Are there any other items to come before the board tonight? We do have a need for an executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Subsection 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school district, and I declare so, that with the BEA Teachers Union grievance. We will be returned to full session only for the purpose of adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion to go into executive session. Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mrs. Massardo?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We're now in executive session.